So I already had a curiosity. I was also, well, who is this man who's talking about village development? And then when I met Rajgopal, I even got more interested, yeah, because he was a man who lived the values of Gandhi. And when you meet somebody, Abhishek, who's not just speaking, but living the values they're speaking, it's much more powerful an impression. And so from then on, I slowly wanted to understand Gandhi, not just his biography, but to understand how he suggested we do development in India, yeah, and how he suggested we maintain non-violence as a way of life.
Our next question is, how are you influenced by Gandhian thoughts?
I think I'm deeply influenced by Gandhian thoughts because I have been slowly changed over my 40 years in India. So, you know, I came when I was in my 20s, and every part of me changed and transformed as every year. And in that transformation, I began to see that development should be fair. Development should be non-violent. Development, that is community development, no? These are the programs we were working on. So it should be fair, and it should be inclusive, and it should be non-violent. And these values slowly came into my life. And then, Abhishek, I realized, oh, these are all Gandhian values. I should go to the university and study, because as a Western educated person, I was always thinking I had to fully understand something, not just follow. Yeah? I always think it's important to be critical, in your thinking, and think carefully. So I went back to the university while I lived in India, sort of a distance learning course. I went back and did a second master's degree and a PhD on Gandhi and nonviolence and peace education. And that's when I had really time to study his collected work, 100 volumes, oh my goodness, and all his writings and all his experiences, and to understand it as how it can help us in today's world.
Our next question is, what is nonviolence and peace?
That's really a good question. So nonviolence is, some people in the West will say, oh, nonviolence means not violence. But that's not what nonviolence means. Nonviolence in the sense of ahimsa is a deep sense of love and compassion. Deep sense of love and compassion. So it's a way of behaving. You can be loving or you can be hateful. You have many choices in the way you live your life. So nonviolence is to lead your life with love and compassion, right? And peace is a state that you want to achieve, a kind of a state of peacefulness, or to be actively building peace, right? So whereas nonviolence is about love and compassion and offering love and compassion, peace is about how do we bring social harmony to our world outside? How do we bring the goal of peaceful coexistence to our community?
You start any movement, please tell about any one movement.
What's that? A movement? Like Ekta Parishad? So I was looking around for how you get people together around nonviolence. Because I can work with you for 1 month, and Abhishek can slowly learn nonviolence, but that's very slow if I take one person one day, one person the next day, or even a small class of 30 people and teach them nonviolence for 1 year. That's a very small number. So how do you get a larger number of people engaged in nonviolence, to think nonviolently, to have that love and compassion in their hearts? And so one of the ways that is important is to associate with nonviolent movements, movements that are helping to bring justice to a group of people through nonviolence. So I associated myself with Ekta Parishad and tried to see in this Ekta Parishad, which means Unity Forum. It's a social organization crossing 8 states of India, Abhishek, so it's quite big. I wanted to bring the component, how do you bring this deep values in the movement, in the leadership of the movement?
So next question is how we increase women equality in the world.
How?
How we can increase women's equality in the world.
Women's equality, yeah. How do we increase women's equality? Well, you know that we have roughly 50% women in the world. And so it makes sense that both 50% men and 50% women together make a better world. It should not be that we only leave it to the 50% male to make the better world and then we benefit as women. Right? So in India, in every country, you'll find women's inequality, where women may not get the same wage for a job. Men may get a higher wage for doing the same work because it's perceived they're the breadwinner, they're men, they're more established. Women, maybe they're married, maybe they also have families, so maybe we don't pay them quite so much. So wage inequity is very common, right? Very often women are said, particularly in India, you stay at home, you look after children. I have met many women who in the family, they cannot go anywhere without their brother or their father. And they can't really move around until they get married, but once they get married, they're then in their shosharal home, in their in-laws' home. And again, they are somewhat confined. So we said, okay, so how to get women to be able to take their own decisions so they can live in the family happily, but they can also have their own decisions, right? So what we did is we brought women, some in purdah, some were veiled women. We took them out of the home and built a women's group. And then you know what? The veil came off because they were all with women, right? And then they began to talk, because getting women to talk is very important. Because when you talk, you think socially. When you're quiet alone, you think yourself. But when you're in a group, you have to think and talk to a group. And so slowly we got all these women who had been at home in purdah. They didn't talk because father-in-law said, you chup raha, so you sit quietly, right? You do your work. And when they came out and joined these women's groups, they began to talk. And amazing. And then when they started talking, they got self-confidence. They said, oh, I'm also important. And they called each other Benji and began to build up a kind of rapport. So we call those, Abhishek, self-help groups, right? When women come together, everybody knows self-help groups. But self-help group is also for getting women to talk and feel like there's somebody in a group. And that's very, very important. So in solving the women equality question in India, one of the most important things in rural areas is to get women to come out and talk. And then slowly take leadership. Maybe after some years become the panchayat leader. Why not? So women can be decision makers. So just as I said 50% men, 50% men, 50% women, if women can exercise all their capacities, then we're going to have a better world, because then everybody is going to exercise their capacities. And just one final thing. One of the problems we've had in our gender equality is sometimes men feel left behind. Oh, all the time focused women's equality. What about men's equality? Yeah. Why not men having equality? That's also true. Boys growing up should also feel confident. No? Men should also feel confident. As soon as men lose confidence, you know what happens? They start drinking. They start being irresponsible because they don't have confidence. And we have a big drinking problem in many rural areas in India. And I think that's because we need to also give men confidence in terms of who they are. So everybody should get confidence to come up and make a better life.
Next question is, why people call you Indian daughter-in-law?
Yes. Just because I have stayed in India so long, and I've tried in my small way to help people, yeah. And because I say very often, I have white face with Indian heart, so people call me Indian daughter-in-law.
How we can protect our land and forest?
So protecting land and forest is a big subject. And I just want to say that if you have a piece of land or a house, which you can call your own, you feel much more secure. Yeah? Right? Because you know you have a little piece of land or a house. And so if in cities, it's easier to rent a house. But in the rural areas, you don't rent. You have to stay with your relatives, right? So getting in rural areas, particularly poor communities, if they can have a little piece of land, they feel more secure. And if you can get the women to also have their title to the land, so men have title and women have title, then they feel much better because they know they have a status in the home. And so that is land. On forest, we have a lot of forest in India that is degrading. And so we need to do two things, Abhishek. One, we need to support our Adivasis and forest dwellers to guard the forest, to be trustees of forest, so the forests regenerate. But we also, number two, we need young group people like you to do tree planting and reforestation. Also the government Department of Forest to do reforestation, so we'll have more forest cover. But it's really imperative because of oxygen now and climate change. We need to have a good forest cover.
How we can bring changes between poor communities?
Two communities when there's conflict?
Poor communities.
Poor communities. Say the question again.
How we can bring changes between poor communities?
How do we bring changes of poor communities? I think what we say is that if a poor community has a poor family has a piece of land and also has a livelihood, then they have a chance, right? But because they're poor and there's a lot of forces that work against poor people, that's why they're called marginalized, not because they get marginalized. It's important they stay together as a group. So we have to build group development, which we call community-based development. And that's how we slowly bring poor people into community to work on land and livelihood.
You can explain that what is the Ekta Parishad?
Ekta Parishad, as I mentioned earlier, is a social organization that is working on land rights and livelihood rights. That is helping this idea that I just told you of helping marginalized communities to get out of poverty.
You met Bagi. What was the experience to meet it first time Bagi?
So I've met the Buggies, so many years ago, and They were younger, so they had the long mustaches, no? And they had the guns, and I was going, ooh, scary guys. But they're very, very warm-hearted because these are they used to live by the gun. And after the Chambal surrender, they gave up the gun. And giving up the gun and taking non-violence is a huge thing, right? Because you're used to all the time using gun, getting money, extortion, robbery. And now suddenly you give up the gun. They went to prison for a period of time, and then they came out to be farmers and to live a normal life. And so I think it's extraordinary. It's a great history of this area.
And so thank you very much. So please, we are thank you for please coming in the Reality of Issue channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jai Jagat.